Hi, Ricky.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Today we are going to discuss the lesser known of you,
Okay.
which is into the education area.
Okay.
We would like to understand from you, who is a Grammy winner. You are the ambassador for UN in many of these areas. You are the ambassador for Earth Day. You are an honorary professor. And so many things you have done and achieved in such a short time. I'd like to first understand how did you do all this in such a short age? What was that which prompted you and made you what Ricky Kej is of today?
I guess from day one, since I was a small child, I've always been driven by passion. I've always been driven by what I'm passionate about, what I feel strongly about. Every single step that I've taken along the way has been sort of like an extension of my personality. It's been an extension of my beliefs. Every single piece of art that I've created has always been an extension of me. So I guess that's the reason why my driven personality comes across in all that I do and in all that in all the milestones that I've sort of achieved. So I guess it's passion that drives me.
Ricky, as a kid,
Yeah.
You went to school and you were like any other boy. What was your experience in the school education, your favorite subject, or how did it all come up, this education, and what was your school's favorite teacher? Were you mischievous in the school? Were you...
No, I was pretty much a very quiet child right up to, I think, my 10th standard. I was very quiet and I used to do my own thing, did not have too many friends, and was not at all mischievous. And and basically that I used to spend a lot of my time studying, and I used to also spend a lot of my time with music, listening to music, playing music. And I was quite obsessed with my music system growing up, in the sense that I would constantly keep listening to music, trying to decipher, who are the different musicians within every song, what kind of cultures they come from, what kind of backgrounds they come from. So I would say that I had two forms of education. One was through music, because while listening to music, I learned about different cultures and different traditions from around the world. And also a lot of history has been chronicled through music. So I would listen to music and I would understand about the different times and different eras, within different countries and things like that. And at the same time, my education happened through the regular textbooks of history, geography, and mathematics and science and English and things like that. So my education was twofold. One was through music and the other was through your regular academics.
And you amalgamated the two very nicely. Learned from the music and the forms and history attached to the whole thing.
I guess so. So the thing is that it was amalgamated at some point in time, but I did feel a lot during my schooling years. I did feel very strongly that a lot of what I'm learning is not going to be applicable in my life. So I did feel quite strongly that that why am I studying these things when it's not going to be applicable in the later parts of my life. And also there were other issues also growing up which I felt strongly about, like we had a lot of scripture classes in our school, and this was something that I felt very strongly against, that why are we being indoctrinated with religion in schools. That is why, and I guess that is one of the main reasons why I grew up becoming an atheist, because I could not understand why religion is being indoctrinated and why is religion being forced down on people, and that's what made me dive deeper and deeper into that. And I realized that I think I need to live my life as an atheist.
In terms of your education and what are your thoughts around this? You always had untraditional thoughts, and in education policies that is there, how do you see education should be today? What would be the education look like as a dreamer that you are?
See, the education system today, I believe, is based completely on fear. Like, fear of failing, fear of not getting enough marks, fear of not being in the top 10 in the class, fear of standing up in society, fear of starving to death. So everything is based on fear, and students and children are constantly fearful, and they're learning out of fear. So I believe that if this this thought of learning through fear is converted into interest, then I think the education system will be far more successful. But the problem is that the whole interest levels have come down drastically when it comes to children. Children are not interested in learning. Children are not interested in figuring out new things. Children are not interested in innovating within the classrooms. They're just learning out of fear. So I think that is something that needs to needs to be a huge paradigm and philosophical shift when it comes to the education system. So that's basically when it comes to school. When it comes to colleges and all that stuff, then that's a completely different debate.
Yeah, it's one thing, Ricky. I've seen a couple of interviews of yours, and I saw that you wear a badge with a pin out here, and which has 17 sustainable development goals of UN, and fourth being the education, the quality of education. Could you explain something about that?
See, there are two forms of, there are two aspects to education, again, in my personal opinion. One aspect of education is about, is about learning and having and gaining the life skills for carrying out your life, in a more successful manner. The second methodology of education, or the second reason for education, is to just follow a traditional career path of finishing off school, then finishing off college, then finishing off your +2 rather, and then after that getting into an engineering college and then getting a job, getting campus selected and getting a job. So basically, it's like it's like education is just used as a medium, not for learning, but just for pursuing that traditional career path to getting a job and to having a family and to doing what society expects from you. So for me, that second part did not appeal to me at all, because I believe that I wanted to make my own future. I wanted to create my own path when it came to my livelihood and when it came to what I wanted to do as a profession. Because from a very early stage in my life, when I was maybe in about the 3rd or 4th standard, that is when I decided very strongly that I'm going to be a musician for the rest of my life. And it was a very, very strong will that I had, that this is all that I want to do for my career, as my hobby, as my profession, as my bread and butter, and I only wanted to do music. So I realized a little later on that it's not going to be an easy path getting there, because there is no traditional career path, or there's no traditional steps that you can take to becoming a musician. You have to forge your own path into becoming a musician. So, and I also realized two things. That number one is that you have to be an absolute entrepreneur if you want to get into a creative field. You cannot just be a talented musician. You have to be a talented marketing person. You have to be a talented speaker. You have to be a talented presenter. You have to know how to run a business. You have to be an accountant. You have to be all these particular jobs mixed into one in order to be a musician. And the second thing is that you have to have very strong leadership qualities, because at the end of the day, you have to stand up to society. You have to stand up to your parents. You have to be able to lead a group of people, because being a musician is not a solo career. You need the support of a lot of people around you to fulfill your vision. So basically so you have to have those leadership qualities, and that's what I tried to instill in myself, because I realized that that I will need to be all these things in order to be a musician. Because music is no longer just being a talented musician and sitting down and making music in a dark room and then hoping that you'll have an ecosystem which will automatically be built around you to support you. That's a thing of the past. Now everything has to be done by you, and that's what I realized.
Wonderful. In terms of our education in India, primarily, or in the world around, primarily we are looking more and more science-related education rather than the arts and the formal. How do we make a change? It needs a change. Definitely we need to have the change. How do we make it, or what would be the way forward? How do we dream that?
I guess the thing is that I believe in my heart that the arts is an extremely important form of a medium of instruction and education when it comes to children. And because if you want to holistically educate a child or a human being, the thing is that the arts is something that reaches out to them emotionally. It's a very good way of expressing yourself. and that's what brings about the individuality of a person, because you can teach as much science to a child as possible, which is important, or as much geography as possible, as much history as possible, which, as I said, is extremely important. But at the same time, you're teaching what has been what has been found out, or what has been discovered, or what has been invented by people in the past. Again, I stress on it, which is also very important. But at the same time, when you teach a child the rules of art, then they basically, the child has got the opportunity to interpret those rules in whatever way he or she wants to, and that's what brings about the individuality of a person. So I believe that an education, a holistic education in the arts, in music, in theatre, in film, and all these other creative medium, actually brings about the individuality in a person, rather than making a child a robot, throughout the education system. And so basically that, and also it's pretty much a proven fact that children who have excelled at fields like music and the arts are also, it also sort of like it gets transferred on to subjects like science and maths, where they become better at science and maths and things like that. So I feel that when it comes to education in the arts, we're just not taking it seriously enough, and this is not just an India problem. This is a world problem, where we're not taking it seriously enough. And I think children would be better off if they have a holistic education in the arts along with the regular education, when it comes to your traditional topics and subjects.
With internet coming in, Ricky, now, and the education is completely changing. I hope and I feel and see that the education is completely changing with the advent of free internet to everyone in the villages as well. How do you see this education? Is it really happening? Is it happening for the good? Can we find out great musicians out of the woods?
See, the thing is that, again, it depends upon what the definition of education is. If it's the education system, then I don't believe that's changing at all through the internet. In fact, it's whatever... so basically what it's doing is that it's maybe simplifying the education system, where, you've got more and more mediums of instruction, like, more beautiful visual mediums and simplified methods of, like, of instructing children. But I don't believe it's changing the education system. But as you said, when it comes to musicians, giving master classes on the internet, or musicians or artists giving classes on the internet that can be accessed by people who have got an internet connection or who've got a mobile phone or something like that. That, of course, is helping to some extent. But then people have to actually look out for those videos, or have to look out for those master classes, which I don't believe too many people are doing. Simply because the children are so involved in sticking around with what the education system is, because they're graded based on that. So they themselves are probably, at least this is what I think, that they themselves are not going to look out for a more wider or a more holistic way of education, because they're going to feel that that's a waste of time. So unless the arts and unless music and all these other beautiful mediums are part of the actual education system, I do not see it as being successful. So it's important to be part of the education system itself.
So that comes to the education policies needs to be changed?
I agree. Yeah, the policies, it needs to be changed at the legislation level and at a policy level. So what I did was that, since you spoke about the Sustainable Development Goals, I created this sort of like this education program for children, where since I'm a musician, I wrote these 27 songs for children, which are based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And so they're very simple songs, very easy to learn, and very infectious tunes, where you listen to it once and it just gets stuck in your head. And what we did was that I realized that this needs to be part of the system itself. So I approached publishers, textbook publishers, and I requested them to make it, give it to them for free, and I requested them to make it part of the, the textbooks, the CBSE and ICSE textbooks. So a couple of publishers have taken it up, especially Macmillan, and it's currently the rhymes are in 4.9 million textbooks across India.
Wow.
So that many children every year are going to be learning these rhymes, and sustainability is going to be pretty much a conversation topic for them at a very young age, from the first grade itself, because the rhymes are appearing, different rhymes are appearing in different grades, but the rhymes are appearing all the way from first grade to the 8th grade. So that was my hope, that, bring in a little bit of music into the education system, a little bit of poetry, and at the same time, start a conversation on sustainability at a very young age.
Ricky, you have been known for unconventional and non-traditionalist approach.
Yeah.
Would you attribute this train of thought to your education or life experiences?
I guess life experiences, because my education has been quite traditional, in the sense that I went to Bishop Cotton Boys School, which was an ICSE school. So it was pretty much a straightforward, traditional, path when it came to my education. And then after that, I went to a PUC college. I went to Cathedral PUC college. Then I studied dentistry after that. So which was forced on me by my parents, even though I was very adamant that I'm going to be a musician, and there was never any intention of becoming a dentist. And that in itself was quite a thing, because I went to college for 5 years just to satisfy my father. And at the end of 5 years, I did not know anything about dentistry, but I still got a degree. So which is quite a testimony to what the education system is about today. If you go to college for 5 years, and I pretty much gave the system, and that's how I got my degree. In the sense that what I would do is that I would be doing music the whole time, and bunk a lot of classes and things like that. And then 3 or 4 days before the exam, I would. My university was 10 years old, which means that there were 20 question papers which were previous to the question paper, previous to my examination, because you had the supplements and you would have the main exam. So I would take those 20 question papers, and you would imagine that with each question paper there would be like maybe 20 questions. So you would imagine that there are 400 questions that have been asked, in the past. But that's not the case. I realized that, it's just about 60 questions that are repeated again and again. So I would take the 60 questions and I would consolidate them, and I would underline the textbooks, and I would just by heart that, and I would go to the exams, and I would get a really good percentage every single year. So that is what, and in fact I would be in the top 10 in my class all 4 years of giving written exams. So that's how I did. I pretty much gamed the system, and I got my degree at the end of 5 years, that is after my internship. And that was my history with my degree college.
How can people utilize education to make a difference in the world, especially in conservation and environmental issues, like what you have done in your life?
So the current education system does not teach you much about conservation. The current, again, this is strictly my opinion and it might be controversial, but the current education system teaches you to be very selfish. You have to be the first in your class, you have to be better than everybody else. You have to, when it comes to business studies, it's all about profits. It's all about that it's profits over everything else. It's capitalism over everything else. So the current education system just does not teach you how to live in a society. It does not teach you how to live in a community. It does not teach you to be philanthropic. It does not teach you to share. It does not teach you to care. So basically, these are things that are not in our education system for some reason. And I believe that, as I said, there has to be a huge philosophical shift in our education system to actually make conservation efforts and to make climate action and these kind of issues more. To mitigate these issues, basically, and to bring about a society that is more compassionate, to bring about a society that's more empathic, to bring about more empathy within our society. And I believe that the education system is somehow robbing empathy from children. And I believe that there needs to be a huge shift in our education system to ensure that children remain with empathy, because children, I believe, are born with empathy. They are born with compassion. They're born with kindness. Children are born loving nature. They are born, with a lot of kindness towards animals. But the thing is that all of that is somehow erased through the education system. And I think that, I do not know. I'm not in a position to say how that can change, but I believe that then it needs a huge reversal in the education system to actually make sure that children remain that way.
Ricky, our doctor, our
Yeah.
Professor Ricky Kej, do we see Ricky Kej opening up a music school or some kind of an institution in future?
No, unfortunately, I'm a really bad teacher. So I believe that when it comes to the arts, there are always two ways to learn. Like for example, there's this very famous director and an award-winning director in Karnataka. His name is Girish Kasrawali. So he said something that really resonated with me a while back. So somebody asked him that, are you going to start an institute or something like that? And then he said that no, because I do not want to teach. I want to make films. And I'm a creative person, so I want to constantly express myself making films. And he said that there are two ways for people to learn. One is that go to an institute and learn, or learn from people's work, So that's what. So he's like, I hope that I inspire people through my films to become better filmmakers, So so I've not reached that stage of Girish Kasrawali because I absolutely admire him and he's the hero of mine. But the thing is that I believe that, I hope that, that instead of verbatim teaching people and teaching them notes and scales and and rules of music and all that stuff, I hope that people listen to my music and and maybe learn from that.
Thank you, Ricky. It was pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
To learn, so much to get motivated from, and I hope the students get this feeling and they learn from your life. Such a great personality. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thanks
so much.
to-
Wonderful meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.